Hey, I'm Steve with Rum Crow Woodworking, and I know, this is another lantern video. There's only about 1,000 of those out, but I hope to make this one a little bit different to make it worth your while to stick around. So I make these on the off-season, craft fair season, we call it around here, and I first started making these with the jack-o'-lantern faces, and then I got stuck with some inventory left over after the Halloween season, and I don't like that. So we took a little spin on this and created this so that I can take, and depending on the season, I can change from Halloween to fall and then on to the Christmas season, so that I can sell these all year round, depending on which craft fair I go to. And really, it's limitless what you want to put on the front: Santa Clauses, candy canes, pumpkins, whatever it might be. So this is a video on how to make these, and I appreciate your patience since this is my very first video ever. So stick around and let's get to it. So the very first thing that I do is I bring the cedar planks home, the fence pickets home, and I let them sit in my shop for about a week or so because they're always super wet. So lay them flat, and this helps them kind of dry out and shrink a little bit to be the size that they're going to be permanently. The next thing I do is I run them through the planer. This is for two reasons. First off, because I like the smooth finish versus the rough way that they come. And then number two, I'll make sure that they're all the same thickness, so that I've got, you know, equivalent boards working with for the whole project. But do what you want with it. Use a sander. Don't do them at all. It's fine. So after running them through the planer and getting them smooth and all the same thickness, then I'm going to run them through the table saw and just take a very little bit off of one edge, and this will give me a clean edge to work with, because if you've worked with cedar pickets, you know that they're pretty rough all around. So right now we're just doing I don't know, I guess you can call it milling, but getting it down to the right size. And again, I'm doing 7 fence pickets because I'm batching these out. If you're just doing one, you may only have 1 or 2 fence pickets that you're working with. Okay, so next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip these down. Now that I've got one clean edge, rip them down to 4 1/4 inches. And 4 1/4 is going to be one of the main measurements here. It's going to be the width of the fronts, backs, and also the tops and bottoms. We'll rip some more down later to 3 1/2 inches, but for now, since I'm batching them out, it's easier for me just to run them all through at 4 1/4 and do it that way. So 4 1/4. Okay, so now that I've got them all ripped to 4 1/4, I'm going to come over here and cut my 8-inch long pieces. So I always start with just squaring up the end of the fence picket. Measure out 8 inches, mark it, and then we're going to cut these are going to be pretty much the height of the sides and the front and back for all the lanterns. Also, what I do here is use my version of a stop block and set that up, because then if you're off by 1/8 of an inch, whatever it is, at least the important thing is that they're all going to be the same size, and they don't. This is much more accurate using this stop block than trying to measure each one out. So just cut your 8-inch pieces up. So now what I'm going to do is cut 6-inch pieces, and the 6-inch lengths are going to be the tops and bottoms of our lanterns. And again, I'm batching these out, so I'm going to just cut up a whole, I can't remember if I did 1 or 2 of these fence pickets. You just have to measure it out. If you're only building one lantern, then you may just cut these off the end of your one fence picket from earlier you did your 8 inches on. But again, use the stop block method and get them all the same length. This is a little less important because you don't have to actually line stuff up with it. And you can do whatever size you want. I chose 6 inches just because I thought that looked pretty good. Now I will say, hold on to these little end pieces because we're going to use those later. Now, having our tops and bottoms cut, the 6-inch pieces, I'm going to put a 45-degree chamfer bit in my router table, and we're going to route chamfer on one side of each of the 6-inch boards just to give it a little more dimension. Again, this is optional. If you like the square look, just stick with the square look. But I kind of like the way they look with the chamfer on there. So I'm going to do that on each of these edges. And I don't have a fancy lift yet. I'd love to get one. So for now, I just have to eyeball it and do it from underneath. And you can go that way. So I've got the bearing on top and I'm ready to get started. And I will show you that I did have it unplugged the entire time I was doing that. So safety first, right? Okay, so let's chamfer. So once you've got the chamfer on there, you do all of the 6-inch pieces, then you've got your top and your bottom set for each of the lanterns. Okay, so at this point you've got a lot of different pieces cut. These are our 8-inch by 4 1/4 pieces, and then we've got a stack of 6-inch by 4 1/4 pieces. So these are going to be your sides, back, and front, and these are going to be your tops and bottoms. Now each one of the lanterns is going to take 4 of these 8-inch pieces, keeping in mind that 2 of them are going to need to be cut down to 3.5 inches. And really it depends if you are batching these out. Depends on how many you're going to make. Sometimes it might make more sense to take one of your whole fence pickets, and instead of doing the 4 1/4 rip that we did earlier, go ahead and do your 3.5 rip, and then you can cut them down to 8 inches on the miter saw later, if that makes sense. For me, I just went ahead and did them all at 8 inches, and as I need to, I'm going to rip them down individually. And then I'm also, if I need more 6 inches, then I will steal from this pile and then just see how many I end up making. Then earlier, when we were cutting down the 8-inch, these 8-inch panel pieces, at the end of the boards, we ended up with these little pieces that still are kind of dog-eared. Hold on to these because this is what we're going to use. We'll use a lot of these to make our little top knot on here. So that's where we can get that and make that just a little extra. And you can do it yourself as a stem. You can make it whatever size you want, but we'll show you how I'll show you how that's going to go together here in just a minute. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide these out. And then I'm going to start ripping some of these to 3.5 inches. This is what you're going to end up with. It's all these stack of sides and these little pieces that they're eventually going to go on the inside of these sides, kind of like that. Okay, so now we're going to cut our, I'm calling them top knots, and these are the pieces that are 2.5 inches by 1 3/4. And again, you can make yours whatever size you want. I just happen to like this size. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by taking some of our leftover pieces from earlier. These ones with the dog ear on them, and I'm going to rip these to 1 3/4 inch. That's how we're going to start with this. And you can do this on, you can set this on your crosscut sled or whatever, however you want to do it. It's really up to you. So let's cut these down. Now after I've ripped these smaller pieces for our top knots off, now I'm going to cut them at my miter saw. This may be something that you might want to consider doing on a crosscut sled or whatever you're going to be comfortable with. I am going to be comfortable doing this because I've cut small pieces like this many times, and I also have this cool thing, which is called a $10 million stick or something like that. And I'll show you. I'm going to use it when I cut these. It's going to help me hold these pieces and keep my hands safely away from it. So first thing I'm doing is I'm going to mark out, what did we say, 2.5 inches? Let's do 2.5 inches. Alright, so mark out my 2.5 inches right there. I always do myself a little bit of a reference line. It just helps me line up my blade because I don't have one of those cool shadow casting things or anything else. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to get it into position, and I've got it lined up where my line is. Okay, let me switch to this other side here. Okay, so we're on the other side, and what I've done is I've got it, I'm getting it lined up so that I know where my cut is going to be. And once I got that hold in place, I put up my stop block again, so I can just repeat these and not have to measure it every time, because I'm going to be doing several of these. I'm just going to go ahead and cut up all the material that we have. Okay, so now it should cut at the 2.5 or close by. Do whatever you want. And again, I'm going to use this thing here, the stick, because it helps me keep my hand far away from that in these small pieces. This has 2 little rubber nubs on here that helps hold it in place, keeps it from sliding, as well as some knobs on this side. So basically I just set that on there, I put a little pressure down, and it keeps it in place. And let's do a cut. Let me put my hearing protection on first. Okay. And there we go. Here's our block, and we're going to go sand the edges down, the rough edges off. Okay, so now let's work on the inside rail. We're going to take one of our cut off pieces from the 3.5 inch rip we did earlier. These are 8-inch little pieces. I'm going to mark down 1 inch from the top, and then I'm going to take it over to the drill press and using a 3/8 inch Forstner bit, drill a small hole in there. And this is going to receive a screw, and I forgot to film this later of putting the screw into this, so forgive me for that. So drill a small recess where you can put a screw in there that will be flush with the outside surface, and then do the same thing 1 inch down on the inside of your face plates. 1 inch on the right, 1 inch on the left, on the inside of your face plates. And this is going to seat the magnet that we're going to use to hold the face plates on. Flush with the top of here so the magnet will be sure to grab it. So for example, here's our magnet that's going to go in our face frame. It'll catch on that and stick. So now just do that a bunch of times, and we've got our inside rails done. Now we're going to put our magnets in our faces. These are the back faces where we already pre-drilled for the 3/8 inch Forstner, 1 inch down from the top. And for this, I'm just going to use some of this JB Weld 5-minute epoxy. I tried CA glue in the past, and I don't know, they didn't want to stick as well as they could have. So we're gonna try this time. Mix this up a little. It starts to get a little bit cloudy once it's mixed. There's probably a better way to do this, but I don't really know what it is. So this is what we're gonna do, and it doesn't take a whole lot. I'm going to dab some in there like so. A little more, put it in this one. Now we're just going to, I'm going to plop my magnets in here. And you know, I get asked, well, how come, why didn't you put magnets in the rail pieces as well? And that's because I'm not smart enough to remember that magnets have a positive side and a negative side, and if you line those up incorrectly, then they'll repel each other instead of attaching. So yeah, so this, I just do metal, magnet on metal. So we'll set these aside someplace where there's no metal around them and let those set up and move on to the next step. Now we're going to work on our side pieces. So I've got one of our rails here, and I've got our one of our side pieces. So these are the shorter 3.5 inch pieces, and this is a jig that I made because I'm going to be batching these out. And what I made this is just a piece of plywood. This is 3/4 plywood as the base, and this is the equivalent of one of those strips we cut earlier. So it's the same thickness as the material we're working with, the lantern. And whenever to put this on, I lined this up, I lined the side up with the edge. I want to show this. I lined the side up with the edge, and then attach this with the brad nailer, essentially making this distance here the same width as this, so that whenever it comes time, now we're gonna put these together, we'll have our jig. You can take your side piece, slide it under here against your jig, and then we take this piece with your screw. Do these. Okay, so the first one, do it with the screw up away from you, and then line this up top and bottom, and then punch the holes in, brad nail it in. But then the next one, because these are going to sit on the lantern this way, okay, the opposite side's not going to work. So if you flip this over for your other side of your lantern, then your screw is going to be at the bottom, and that's not going to work, See, so what you have to do is, you've done your first one with the screw at the top. The next one, you're going to take this piece, flip it over, and put the screw at the bottom. And then that will make them correct. So let me do 2 of them and show you what I'm talking about. So I've got my first side piece. I'll put it under my jig, secure it in there. Then I'm going to take this with the screw up, place it on here, line it up with the top and the bottom. And you can use glue for this. I don't really find it necessary. I'm using 5/8 inch brads because that's what I have. And this is awkward. I have to do this with my left hand. I usually have it the other way around. Okay, so I'll put a couple screws. Be careful not to hit. Sorry, put a couple brads. Be careful not to hit the screw that I put in. So really, just a couple of those hold it. So here's one of your sides, and you can see. Hopefully, you can see this. It's inset here. So when your face goes on, this isn't a face, but let's just say this is your front of your lantern. Your face will sit in here like this against the other one. So this is the first one, and remember we did the screw at the top. Now the next one we're going to take, and the screw is not going to be at the top. We're going to flip it around toward us. Okay? And we'll put it on our jig, line it up. Do a little brad that in, and so that's at the bottom. So you can see now we want them both at the top, and then they'll match. Let me adjust the camera here a second. So now they're going to match with the screws both at the top whenever we go to put this together. Hopefully that'll make a little more sense here in just a second. So these are your side pieces. So I am going to go ahead and use some glue on this. So the first one, it's up. Again, I'm lining these up. I've got my 5/8 inch brad nails, screw or knots in the wood. So there's one. Now the next one, if you remember, I have to turn this toward me this way. So I'll put it in my jig. A little line of glue. Flush that up. And there we go. So now, when they go inside, they'll be opposite directions. Okay, so the next step in assembly, we've got our 2 sides here, which we've already put the rails on, and then I've got a back piece, and I'm also have a face over here because we're going to use that to help square things up. And I like to use a little bit of glue, so I'm going to do glue and brad nails, which in mine I've got 1-inch brad nails. That's what I had. I wouldn't go any less than 3/4. The 5/8 I use for the top knot here in a minute are just a little bit too small, so we'll use 1-inch brad nails. So the first thing we do, we'll take one of our sides and put our back piece up here. This is going to go on top, so let me give it a little bit of glue, or as the Viking would say, added dab of glue. Is that trademarked? If it is, I'm sorry, man. I love it though. I say it all the time. Alright, just a little bit of glue. And then we'll square this up. And by the way, there's another way to do this. It's kind of... No, never mind. Okay, so anyway, so we square that up, make everything flush, nice and even, and then we give it a brad, brad, a little more brad down here, brad, and I'll do one in the middle, just for giggles. Wipe off a little extra glue. All right, so we've got one side done, and now the way I do the next side is I'll set this up. And this is the end piece. We'll go here and now always check, because I've done this before, that you've got your end pieces, they're both with your screws on the same side, which is going to be the top. Okay, so this is going to go this way. I'm going to give it a little shot of glue. It doesn't take a whole lot, just, you know, it'll stay. Alright, and we'll square this up here. Now the other thing that's going to help, I take the face, see if I can show this on camera. I take the face and I go ahead and set it in place here, and that's going to help. It just helps hold the top piece up. Okay. So we've got that all in place, got it matched up. Give it a brad, and one more minute. Okay, now I'll double check my inside. It went okay, and there we go. So this is the start of our lantern. Still a little bit fragile, but we'll get there. Okay, so that's installing the sides and the back. Next up, we're going to do the top and the bottom. Okay, to do our top and the bottom, this is a little tricky. Basically, so where you have your screws, of course, this is going to be the top, right? So actually what I do is I start by flipping it over. So we're essentially working on the bottom here. And your bottom piece and top piece, if you remember, we did chamfers in them, if you chose to do that. If you do that, make sure you flip that piece up, and it's going to go here like this. Now there's not really, all I do is, you could measure these out. I just eyeball it and make sure it's pretty close. Nobody's going to come to your craft fair and pull a ruler out and measure it. I mean, some people will really notice. Most people don't care. Just try to make sure that the nicest side is facing forward. Okay, so once you've got that, let me change the camera a little bit. You can see a little bit better. There we go. Okay, and again, I like to do a little bit of glue, so I'm just going to put a little bit of glue around the top here, and not even a whole lot. I mean, it's in grain anyway, but it'll, yeah, there'll still be some that'll hold. Okay, so then my piece here, I'm gonna kind of center it up. Do it by look and by feel. You know, do what you want. It's your happy little lantern. I mean, you want to make it look nice so people can see it. Now the other tip I forgot to tell you is I'll take the face and I'll go ahead and put the face in here too, because this really helps make it, see, like that. I can't even, like, it's kind of tight. I don't know if I can, let me see if I can make this a little bit better. Okay, maybe we can see this a little better now. So I take the face, and of course, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but this is the way it would go. And I put it in here because this is going to help make sure that your face can go in there. And then we finish kind of eyeballing it, getting it where you want it. And then this is tricky too, because you have to also eyeball it. And again, you can measure it out if you want. I don't. I just go for it. Boom. I put one here. Boom. Other side. Boom. Sometimes you miss. You'll have to pull them out. And then now you've got your base on here. Okay? And we'll do the same thing with the top, sort of, except now we're right side up. We have our screws up top. We have our top, which we're going to put the beveled edge on top with the nicest side forward. It's going to go like that. And then I do a little glue. Not a lot. We don't want a whole ton of squeeze out or anything. Center this up again by kind of like look and touch. There's probably a way I can make a jig, but I don't really feel like it, so I'm not going to. Alright, and then give it a Brad. Give it a Brad. Okay, so essentially we've got this piece here, and then the final piece for, oh, you know what, I forgot to put this back in. So listen, when you do the top, you got to put this piece in too. And sometimes, yeah, see what I did? I didn't do it, so, oh, it goes in there. It's a little tough. Sometimes it might be a little tall. You'll just have to cut down your face a little bit. Okay, and then now that I've got that, hold on one second, I'll get my top knot. Okay, so now time for the top knot, and the way I do this, it's basically it's just eyeballing it up toward the center. So I'm going to take and I'm going to put a little bit of glue on here. Doesn't take a ton. Best side facing up, and then center it up. Kind of set it on there. Alright, and then I'm just going to give it let me give it a shot here. Now I switched back to the 5/8 inch brad nail, because really it just has to kind of hold it on. It's only going to go through a very tiny amount and hold it on. You could do the 1 inch, you risk going all the way through, doesn't necessarily matter. Once this glue sets, it's going to be fine. So essentially this is your finished lantern here. And then of course you've got the faces that you're going to be able to put on here. And a lot of these I make, they're friction fit pretty well. And then that's it. That's your lantern. So what does 7 fence pickets get us? I ended up being able to make 13 lanterns, and then have plenty of faces left over, these face plates. To either, you can build more lanterns with them, or you can use these for your face plates, because there's about 17 here, so you got plenty to do faces, at least one face for every lantern. A bunch of these top knots left over, so if you're batching out, you'll have some for later. Randomly one of these top pieces, top or bottom pieces, but it's always good to have extras in case some of this wood has knots in it or gets cracked. It's good to have extras. Okay, so this is what we ended up with, 7 fence pickets. Now let's take a final look at the end product. Well, thanks for making it this far in the video. I hope it was worth your while. Again, my very first video creating, so I know it's far from perfect, but if you want to purchase the plans, I've got those available in my Etsy shop, and I will attempt to leave that link somewhere in the description for those. But again, I hope that this was of value to you, and that you have fun building your own. And any other suggestions on how to improve these, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I always look forward to feedback. I will try to answer all the comments that I can. Thanks a lot.